Ethan Cole had crossed dimensions, fought against the flow of time, just to stand here. He came back to this exact moment, believing he held the power to reverse the single catastrophic choice that had ruined his life. He was ready to speak the words he choked on a year ago, ready to claim the future he abandoned. He pushed the heavy door open, the sound swallowed immediately by the warm ambient chatter inside the familiar cafe. He saw her instantly. Lena Hart, her face alight, wearing the joy that should have been his achievement. But she wasn't Nanapos. Looking at him. She was looking at Adrian Mercer. Adrian was on one knee, his posture radiating confident sincerity. The sight was a physical punch, confirming the ultimate, immediate correction of Ethan's failed interference. The brilliant, expensive gleam of a diamond ring flashed under the golden, warm light that now bathed her in happiness. End quote. "I promise you forever, Lena," end quote. Adrian said, his voice deep and certain, saturated with exactly the conviction Ethan had always lacked. Ethan froze in the doorway, a ghost in his own timeline. He had failed the second chance. He had been granted the impossible opportunity to answer her original confession correctly, and yet he had choked on the words again, trapped by his own cowardice. He had wasted the rewind. And now, the timeline had violently recalibrated, replacing his emptiness with Adrian's certainty. Lena's lips curved into a smile that ripped through Ethan's remaining hope, and she whispered the single word that tore his reality apart. Yes. All his planning, all his suffering, culminated in this devastating answer delivered to another man. He had seen the future, gone back to change it, and returned only to confirm his greatest fear. He was too late. He was always too late. But to understand the scale of this collapse, the absolute finality of his loss, we must return to the night it all truly began. The night when Lena stood vulnerable under the pouring rain, and Ethan Cole, the man who supposedly loved her, decided that silence was the safest, most lethal answer. Ethan Cole stood in the exact spot, the familiar scent of old leather and burnt espresso overwhelming him. The time distortion had thrown him back with brutal precision. He was in the Last Page Cafe, 3 minutes before Lena Hart would lay bare her soul and change the course of their lives forever. He gripped the edge of the small wooden table, his knuckles white. The rain tapped lightly against the wide window pane, mimicking the frantic beat of his own heart. Everything was precisely as he remembered. The low hum of the jazz trio playing a tune too slow for the urgency of the moment, the way the yellow light caught the dust motes floating near the ceiling. And there was Lena. She sat across from him, her focus fixed intensely on the condensation forming on her water glass. She was younger, less guarded. Her eyes still held that intense vulnerability he had systematically ignored. Her wavy hair was damp from the light drizzle outside, clinging slightly to her neck. This was it, the second chance, the opportunity to rewrite the single, most destructive decision of his life. He mentally rehearsed the words. "I love you, Lena. I have always loved you. I was scared. I choose you." Simple, true, definitive. He would lean across the table, stop the trembling in her hand, and confirm everything she needed to hear. He had waited 5 years for this 3-minute window. He watched her breath hitch. He saw the slight flush rise on her cheeks, the universal sign that she was gathering the courage to jump. "Ethan," she began, her voice a fragile whisper against the noise of the cafe. "I have been trying to tell you this for months, but I can't. I can't keep pretending we are just friends when I look at you and see everything I want." The words were an exact echo of the past. The familiar ache of regret threatened to choke him even now, knowing the devastation his silence would cause. He opened his mouth. The perfectly crafted response was lodged in his throat, a heavy stone refusing to move. He felt the old, paralyzing fear of true intimacy, of commitment, rise up like bile. The regret that had powered his jump was suddenly overshadowed by the ingrained cowardice he had never truly conquered. She paused, waiting, her expectant eyes wide and glistening. "Say something, Ethan. Anything. A single word would save them both. A single action would mend the future." He couldn't do it. Instead of speaking the truth he had traveled through time to deliver, He pushed his chair back with a scraping noise that shattered the soft atmosphere. He stood abruptly, his gaze fixed over her shoulder, unable to meet the pleading in her eyes. The entire scenario played out again, tragically identical to the first time. He turned his back on her. He walked away, not running, but moving with the heavy, decisive silence of a man sealing his own fate twice over. The last thing he heard before the world dissolved around him was a single, ragged sob that he knew belonged to Lena. The shift was instantaneous. The cafe vanished. The cold, wet atmosphere of the past was replaced by the dry, sterile air of the present. Ethan found himself standing in the center of his own minimalist apartment, the digital clock on his stove flashing 3 p.m. For days after the point where he had originally left. His chest was heaving. He failed. The time jump had not cured him. It had only offered him the opportunity to demonstrate his weakness again. Panic, cold and sharp, cut through the remaining adrenaline. If he failed the exact moment, what had changed? Had he merely accelerated the process of her moving on? He grabbed his keys and jacket, rushing down the stairs and out into the crisp afternoon air. He drove frantically towards the city's newest contemporary art gallery, a place Lena had dreamed of working since college. It was the place he knew he would eventually find her in this timeline. He burst through the gallery doors, scanning the open, light-filled space. He moved past the abstract sculptures and the silent observers until he reached the large central exhibit featuring a stunning landscape painting, a piece he vaguely remembered Lena admiring years ago. And there she was. Lena was standing in front of the painting, her head tilted, a genuine, uncomplicated laugh echoing softly in the otherwise silent room. She looked healthy, radiant, completely unburdened by the weight of unrequited love. The visual difference from the sobbing girl he had abandoned minutes ago was jarring. Ethan stopped dead in his tracks, leaning heavily against a marble column. He inhaled sharply, relief flooding him, thinking the jump had worked after all. She had found peace. Then he saw the hand. Her left hand was resting lightly on the arm of the man standing beside her. Adrian Mercer. Adrian was tall, impeccably dressed in a dark, tailored coat, his profile strong and commanding. He was leaning down, speaking quietly into Lena's ear, and the intimacy of the gesture was a physical blow to Ethan. Adrian looked up just then, his eyes locking with Ethan's for a fleeting moment. A quick, proprietary glance that dismissed Ethan instantly. It was not Adrian's presence that stopped Ethan's heart, however. It was the ring. A small, perfectly cut diamond rested on Lena's finger, catching the gallery light and throwing sparks of white fire. It was elegant, subtle, and utterly permanent. Adrian gently moved his hand to cup Lena's shoulder, a confident smile spreading across his face as he watched her reaction to his words. He was promising her forever, and she was accepting it with a peaceful surety that Ethan had never warranted. Ethan stood frozen, realizing the full scope of his failure. The time travel hadn't and Oppos. Given him a chance to fix the mistake. It had only guaranteed that when he returned, the consequence would be absolute. He hadn't and Oppos. Saved the future. He had simply ensured that the pain of seeing her lost was fresh and immediate. The world established itself around him again, but it was no longer his normal world. It was a cruel, new reality where his love was irrevocably replaced by a better man. The moment of quiet certainty was over. The urgent, terrifying work of unmaking Adrian's reality, the reality Ethan had handed him, had just begun. The smell of burnt coffee and city exhaust was the only familiar comfort Ethan had left. Everything else was a distortion. He stood across the street from the small gallery where Lena worked, watching the golden light spill onto the pavement. Adrian Mercer was leaning against the brick facade, laughing easily at something Lena had said. Ethan felt the cold seep into his bones, even under the mid-morning sun. This version of the future was established, rooted, thriving. He called Maya, his voice ragged, and quote, "He is always there, Maya, always touching her shoulder, always holding the door, always doing the things I assume someone else would do later," end quote. End quote. Ethan, you have to stop observing them like a scientist studying a virus, end quote. Maya's voice was strained, distant. End quote. You made your decision months ago. This is the consequence, not a solvable equation. End quote. End quote. I have to talk to her. I need her to understand what I saw. End quote. End quote. She doesn't in Apo's. T care what you saw. She cares about what you did. Or rather, what you didn't in Apo's. T do. End quote. Ethan ignored her, hanging up abruptly. Observation had reached its limit. He had to act. His first attempt was clumsy. He walked into the gallery under the pretense of admiring a watercolor piece. Lena saw him instantly. Her smile, which had been bright seconds earlier, hardened into a polite, professional mask. End quote. Ethan, I didn't expect to see you here, end quote. She said, her tone flat, devoid of the warmth he desperately remembered. End quote. I just wanted to check in, see how you were doing. End quote. He hated the pathetic sound of his own voice. Adrian appeared from the back room, smooth and efficient. He placed a possessive yet gentle hand on the small of Lena and Apo's back. End quote. Hello, I'm Adrian Mercer, end quote. Adrian extended his hand, his eyes calm and assessing. End quote. Lena and Apo's told me a lot about you. End quote. Ethan knew the lie inherent in that statement. Lena hadn't in Apo's. T told Adrian about the depths of their shared history, only the surface details of their shared friends and eventual distance. He shook the hand, the contact feeling like a surrender. End quote. Ethan Cole, end quote, end quote. Wonderful to meet the man who inspired so much of Lena's early work, end quote. Adrian continued, his smile genuine, which only fueled Ethan's resentment. Ethan's throat tightened. He couldn't in Apo's. T speak the truth. I inspired nothing but her pain. I was a blank page she wasted ink on. He managed a non-committal grunt and retreated quickly, the forced proximity stifling him. The air in the gallery felt heavy with unspoken loss. Adrian was the calm, stable presence. Ethan was the tremor. The attempts escalated. He started showing up at their mutual haunts, the old bookstore, the river walk. Each encounter was a micro-failure. Lena remained polite but remote. Adrian remained courteous but firm, a silent sentinel guarding the future. One rainy afternoon, Ethan saw them in the Central Park. Lena and Adrian were sharing an umbrella, their heads close together. Ethan watched from the shelter of a bus stop, the rain mirroring the internal storm he couldn't stop. He watched Adrian stop, pull Lena close, and kiss her with a certainty that erased years of Ethan and Apo's indecision. It was too much. Ethan crossed the street, determined to force a conversation that mattered. End quote. Lena, wait. End quote. They both turned. Lena looked tired, the defensive wall back in place. Adrian looked merely annoyed. End quote. Ethan, this ISN and Apo's. T appropriate, end quote. Lena said quietly, end quote. I know, but I need 5 minutes. Just 5 minutes to explain why I didn't in Apo's. T say it. To explain everything. End quote. Adrian stepped forward slightly, shielding Lena. End quote. Whatever you need to explain, Ethan, perhaps it should wait. We were just heading out. End quote. End quote. It can and Apo's. T wait. End quote. Ethan's voice cracked. End quote. You Don and Apo's. T understand, Adrian. I went back. I saw what happened when I walked away. I know how much I hurt her. End quote. Lena flinched at the word hurt. That was the opening Ethan needed. End quote. Lena, I and Apo's. Am here now. I know what I did. I changed it. We can fix this. End quote. Lena looked at him, her intense eyes holding pity and finality. End quote. There is nothing to fix, Ethan. I fixed myself. End quote. Adrian gently took Lena and Apo's left hand, drawing attention to it in a casual gesture. The revelation. Ethan's gaze dropped. There, resting perfectly between Lena's delicate fingers and Adrian's supportive palm, was a brilliant solitaire diamond ring, catching the gray light of the afternoon. The world went silent. The sound of the rain, the traffic, the distant laughter, all dissolved into a dull roar inside his head. End quote. Adrian and I are engaged, Ethan, end quote. Lena stated, her voice steady, emotionless. End quote. He asked last week. End quote. The revelation wasn't an oppose. Just a loss. It was a physical punch. It meant the time travel didn't and oppose. Just failed to save his past. It accelerated her commitment to another man in the present. His desperate intervention had achieved the opposite of his goal. Ethan stumbled back a step, colliding with the cold glass of the bus shelter. The image of the ring seared into his memory, a permanent brand of his failure. End quote. Engaged, end quote. Ethan whispered, the word tasting like ash. End quote. We wish you well, Ethan, end quote. Adrian said, the formal politeness cementing the distance. He put his arm around Lena, guiding her away toward a waiting taxi. Ethan watched them go, two figures receding into the rain, illuminated by the brake lights. The warm amber glow of their future set against the blue-gray of his desolate present. He spent the next 2 days in a self-inflicted exile, paralyzed by the weight of the ring. He had hoped for resistance, for a difficult battle, but he had found victory already claimed. Maya found him late on the second night, sitting in his unlit apartment. End quote. You look like you and Oppos. V seen a ghost? End quote. She commented, flicking the light switch. End quote. I have, end quote. Ethan rasped. End quote. My own, end quote. He recounted the encounter, the ring, the finality of Lena's gaze. End quote. I tried to fight for her, Maya. I tried to use the knowledge I gained. But they were already ahead of me. They moved on while I was stuck reliving the past. End quote. End quote. You weren't and Oppos. Fighting for her, Ethan. You were fighting for your ego. You wanted to reclaim something you thought you owned. End quote. Maya corrected him gently but firmly. End quote. You didn't and Oppos. Apologized to her. You demanded she accept the revised script you wrote for her life. End quote. Ethan stared at the bare wall. Maya was right. His desperation had been selfish. He hadn't and Oppos. Seen Lena. He had seen a prize to be won back. End quote. What do I do now? End quote. End quote. You stop fighting Adrian. You stop fighting the timeline. You start fighting yourself, end quote. Maya instructed. End quote. If you want her to ever consider a future with you, you have to prove you are the man she needs, not the man who was too afraid to need her. And you have to do it without demanding anything in return. End quote. Ethan nodded slowly, realizing the true magnitude of his task. The dramatic escalation wasn't an Oppos. External. It was internal. The obstacle wasn't an Oppos. Adrian or the time itself. It was the profound cowardice that defined him. He had lost the opportunity to be her chosen partner. But perhaps, there was still a sliver of hope to be a better man. Even if that man had to watch her walk down the aisle toward someone else. He pulled himself up, the exhaustion replaced by a cold, sharp resolve. The regret was still there, a heavy cloak, but now it was laced with purpose. The battle for Lena was over. The fight for Ethan Cole had just begun. Ethan stood rigid, the low evening light catching the sweat on his forehead. He gripped the edge of the small table, his knuckles white. Across from him, Lena looked exhausted, her hand protectively clasped by Adrian's. You don't understand the depth of this, Ethan insisted, his voice raw and shaking. I literally saw the consequence of my action before I acted. I came back. I faced the moment I ruined everything. Lena, I was given a chance to fix the past, and when I failed again, that failure solidified this future. Adrian slowly withdrew his hand from Lena's, maintaining eye contact with Ethan. His composure was unnerving. I understand perfectly, Ethan, Adrian said, his voice measured but firm. You had a revelation about regret, but that is your burden, not Lena's responsibility. You are asking her to tear down a relationship built on months of consistency, respect, and presence. A relationship I actively fought for. because you finally realized what you lost. It wasn't just a realization. It was time travel. It was proof. Adrian, I know what you're planning. I saw the ring, the proposal, the life. That was supposed to be mine. Lena flinched. She looked between the two men, the pain of the conflict clear in her eyes. Stop, she commanded, her voice weak but finally cutting through the tension. Just stop. Both of you. Ethan took a ragged breath. Lena, please, look at me. I know I'm not the man you wanted then, but I am here now. I am choosing you. I am fighting for you. This is the moment I should have stayed. This is the moment I should have spoken. Don't let my past cowardice define our entire future. Adrian didn't argue. He simply looked at Lena, his expression conveying quiet confidence and trust. He didn't need to fight Ethan. He just needed Lena to speak her truth. Lena finally met Ethan's gaze, and the intense vulnerability he remembered from the day of her confession returned. But this time, it was armored with certainty. The problem wasn't that you didn't love me then, Ethan, she began, her words slow and deliberate, each one a hammer blow. It was that you couldn't choose me. You ran not once but twice. You saw the future you lost, and that motivated you, not the love itself. Her gaze shifted slightly toward Adrian. Adrian saw the love that was possible and he chose to build it, brick by consistent brick, starting the day you abandoned me emotionally. He showed up. Ethan tried to reach for her hand, but she pulled back instinctively. You are asking me to risk everything I have now, stability, trust, a future that feels solid, for a version of you that only exists because you faced a fictional consequence. Lena continued, shaking her head. The fact that you were granted a second chance doesn't erase the pain of the first rejection. Ethan, it doesn't erase the months I spent realizing I deserved better than silence. Tears welled in Ethan's eyes, the realization of the absolute finality of her words crashing down on him. This was the true consequence. He hadn't and Oppos. T just lost the opportunity. He had created an emotional wall too high for his late regret to scale. I love you, Lena, he whispered, the words tasting like ash. I believe you do, Ethan, she replied softly, her resolution unwavering. But I love Adrian more, because he made it real. He chose to stay. I choose the man who chose me first, consistently, without needing a cosmic intervention to force his hand. Lena stood up, Adrian rising beside her, his presence a silent declaration of ownership of the future. Go, Ethan, Lena said, her voice dropping to a final, desperate plea for mutual peace. Stop chasing what your cowardice destroyed. Start rebuilding yourself. They turned and walked away, two figures moving harmoniously into the amber light of the street lamps, Adrian's arm draped securely around Lena's shoulders. Ethan watched until the elegant cut of Adrian's dark coat and Lena's familiar silhouette were swallowed by the city night. Ethan sank back into the chair, his entire body trembling. The time travel, the frantic attempts, the desperate pleas, all irrelevant. The timeline had corrected itself, not by giving him a redo, but by ensuring that the emotional cost of his past actions was paid in full. He was left in the debris of his own making. Moments later, Maya appeared, placing a hand gently on Ethan's shoulder. She had observed the exchange from a distance. She chose her peace, Ethan, Maya said quietly. Ethan didn't look up. It wasn't fair. I changed. You changed too late, Cole. That's the lesson of the loop. Maya concluded, her tone gentle. Regret is not love. Regret is what you feel when you realize you were too weak to fight for love. Now you have to learn how to be the man who doesn't need to lose everything to start trying. Ethan stared at the empty space where Lena had stood. The true resolution wasn't winning her back. It was accepting the profound, painful permanence of the loss he had engineered. He had to rebuild his courage alone. The second chance wasn't and Oppos. T for their relationship. It was for his soul. I know that this story is intense, and that is precisely why I share these moments. If you value the truth and like stories that make you think and feel, do this. Consider subscribing to the channel and comment what city you are watching from. It is the best way to ensure that you do not miss the next life lesson. Ethan did not try to see Lena again. He understood that his attempt to change history had been a failure, not because the time travel was faulty, but because he had been given the chance to speak, to choose courage over paralysis, and in that crucial moment, he had chosen paralysis again. The time jump had not magically fixed the fundamental flaw in his character. He packed his bags, leaving the apartment that smelled vaguely of coffee and the ghostly memory of Lena's laughter. He didn't contact Adrian. He didn't even contact Maya, knowing he needed to process this loss completely alone. The loss was agonizing, sharper than the original break, because now he knew exactly what he was missing, and he saw the physical evidence of his failure thriving in Adrian's hands. But this new pain was different. It wasn't the dull ache of regret. It was the sharp, clean cut of necessary surrender. He left the city, driving east until the skyline became a smudge in his rearview mirror. He wasn't running from Lena anymore. He was running toward the man he had to become. Ethan finally called Maya from a roadside motel, weeks later. He told her everything: the confession, the time jump, Adrian, the ring, the silence. He expected condemnation, but Maya only offered a quiet acceptance. End quote. "You thought the time machine would change the script?" End quote. Maya said gently. End quote. "But it only changed the stage set. The actor was the same. You proved that your greatest barrier wasn't circumstance, Ethan. It was always you." End quote. He accepted her brutal honesty. He started therapy immediately, something he had resisted for years. He started rebuilding his career, prioritizing commitment over convenience. He focused on becoming reliable, resolute, and brave, traits he realized had been entirely absent when Lena needed them most. He hadn't saved the love of his life, but he had saved his life. And that, he slowly understood, was the real second chance. Years later, he heard news of Lena and Adrian. They were married, happy, living a life of quiet stability. Ethan felt a pang, but it was distant now, like the memory of a scar that had long since healed. Adrian had given her everything Ethan hadn't been able to, and Ethan was finally mature enough to appreciate that someone else's happiness could be his necessary punishment and his eventual peace. The paradox of the time jump was that it forced him to look forward. By losing Lena irreversibly, he gained the imperative to be worthy of any future love, or even just worthy of himself. And that is the quiet, devastating moral of this story. We often believe that the greatest tragedy is losing the person we love. But the real tragedy is when we lose them because we haven't yet found the courage to become the person they deserve. Ethan Cole received the ultimate gift, a clear vision of the consequences of his inaction. He got to watch, frame by frame, the moment his life fractured and saw how someone else stepped effortlessly into the space he abandoned. He spent his time trying to outrun a moment, thinking if he could just get back to that rain-soaked night, he could overwrite the history. But the universe doesn't grant do-overs to fix character flaws. It only grants clarity. The moment Ethan realized that the fight was not against Adrian or against time, but against his own deeply entrenched fear of commitment, that is when the lesson clicked. Adrian Mercer was not the villain. Adrian was the consequence. He was the swift, decisive action that stands in stark relief against Ethan and Appo's slow, agonizing indecision. Adrian was the promise of forever, delivered the instant Ethan turned his back. You cannot negotiate with time, and you certainly cannot negotiate with love. Love is a demanding, insistent force. It requires honesty, presence, and immediate courage. When those are withheld, love moves on, finding a host capable of supporting its weight. The time machine did not give Ethan his second chance with Lena. It gave him his second chance with himself. He finally learned that courage is not the absence of fear. It is the choice to act in the face of fear. And that choice must be made the first time. There are no rewinds on the human heart. Ethan's story is a heavy reminder that if you are waiting for the perfect moment, you are waiting too long. That confession, that chance to step forward, that pivotal moment in your life, it happens once. If you flee, if you stay silent, the consequence is not merely the absence of a future, but the immediate construction of a future where you do not belong. And sometimes, the greatest act of love is to step back and allow the person you hurt to be fully, completely happy with the man who actually chose her. Ethan's final act of true love was letting Lena go without further interference, finally putting her needs for stability ahead of his desire for redemption. He lost the battle, but he finally learned how to fight.